Today's January 28th, 2020, Library Board of Trustees.
Thank you. I'd like to call this first meeting of 2020, our new year, new decade, to order at 3:02, it looks like, on the 28th of January. Can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Craig Borba.
Present.
Harry Courtright.
Present.
David Kelly.
I'm here.
Ed McBride.
Present.
Kathy Warmick.
Here.
Thank you.
The agenda was posted on or before January 21st.
Okay, may we have an approval of minutes? Is there any additions or changes to the minutes from anyone? So can I have a motion to accept, please?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Minutes stand approved. Thank you. Are there any added starters? And do we have a new definition of starter where we were kind of putting everything in starter? Why don't you share with us? You've been educated on the Brown Act, so why don't you tell us what that means?
An added starter, according to what I was told, is emergency or urgent, very urgent items that have to be addressed by the board and action taken before the next board meeting. And once it is addressed, then it would have to be added to the next board agenda for a formal approval. And I would have to notify the city clerk that we had an added item and so that it can all be rectified. This is what I learned in my Brown Act training.
So no, it's not a place to put just general announcements or discussions. It really is more a business of the board.
Yeah, you have your trustee comments and requests section, and we're all kind and we can talk about stuff if we need to that's not actionable.
We stand corrected and hopefully forgiven for our past errors. Are there any public comments from the public?
And everybody looks at
We're
David.
looking at David. Sorry, David. All right, Treasurer Kelly, can we get a report from you?
Yeah, before I start, I'm just curious because I did have a memo that was sent out to everybody. How much time do we want to allocate to that? Or is that going to be a different part of the agenda?
Well, you do have that on 11F, like Frank. You have your own
We put
item.
your own section there to discuss your memo.
Okay, so then I'll just go with the usual report. So if you turn to the page that has our cash account, which would be, I think, about the second, third from the last, maybe one, two. It's the one right before my memo in the packet that was
Gotcha.
mailed to everybody. So it shows a cash balance of 1,955,787.31, which is about less than $300 larger than last time. So I know we're going to have a discussion about interest income at one point. So I don't. Is that going to be? Is that something we want to take on now, or is that part of the strategic plan discussion?
I think it's part of your discussion, so.
Well, we also have the interest income allocations as an item
11G.
Okay.
to talk about.
So I'll just leave it for that.
Okay.
So unless anybody else has any questions about any of those numbers presented herein, I guess we'll just talk about interest income later.
Sure. Now that you're much more closer to this than any treasurer that I think I've ever known, are you feeling better about at least the reports coming and the format, and do you feel that you're getting what you need?
I still have questions, but it's a learning process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What's the expense on the Rollwood Library to date? Looks like we've had a $3,820 expense, and I don't think we started construction yet, so I thought that was supposed to be the last one in.
Hold on, let me find that.
Or have we started construction? I mean,
Yeah, right here.
I can run an audit on that. It's possible that it is just staff time from engineering. I don't know exactly what that is. It says year-to-date expenditures, and that's fiscal year. So I don't know, but I can find out for you.
I just was surprised surprised to see it unless the other money's been expended.
I'm sure it has not.
Okay, so we'll request information on the $3,820. Is that what you're looking at, Kathy? Okay. And we have an update on Wellwood anyway later on the agenda, correct? Because I have some questions about that. Okay.
Okay.
Anything else?
David Gray has a question.
Oh, yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I would make one comment on your agenda. So, can I speak loud enough or do I need to go somewhere?
You're okay.
So, I noticed that you have ad hoc committees and Measure J is not one of them. And from Measure J, we have a library subcommittee and we seem to get lots of questions from this board. And going forward with project, we would request that a Measure J subcommittee be appointed so that we don't have to come to the whole board, but we could have our two subcommittees meeting on a regular basis. And I think that would solve a lot of your questions as to what's happening in timing and so forth.
Okay. So I think that what we have to do there is I need to, and I'm sorry I left the bylaws. For a special ad hoc, we will put that on the agenda for next time, and then we would name that committee. So we would
I also-
allow for public comment.
I have one comment. That I think in the minutes from last meeting, there was a discussion about having the finance committee actually address Measure J issues. So since we're only like so many people here, I mean, it would make sense. I know I'm on the finance committee. I would certainly expect to be on the Measure J committee. So it's just a matter of just saying if it's just the finance committee people who are.
And that might be what we should do. So
That makes-
let's put on the agenda for this to be discussed on our next agenda, where we can vote on what we want to call that. We can have some discussion when we get to it, and I think that makes sense to have the finance committee involved.
I think that was actually slated in the minutes. It says for the February meeting anyway. So.
Yeah. We
But
hear-
I thank
we
you
hear
for your comment.
No, we hear you.
I believe committees can be appointed without
So,
anything, so I don't think we need to bring.
can be by the chair.
At Measure J, the chair just appoints committees, doesn't matter. I don't think you have to have that on.
You know, actually, David, if, from your perspective, if you have a Measure J library subcommittee meeting that's coming up between now and March, I'd be more than happy to
We
attend it.
don't, but there was some email correspondence, and we felt uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
So, I just thought it would be best if, you know, I don't care if it's the finance committee or who it is, but somehow the public probably needs to know that there's a, you know, we're sort of doing the same thing with the Parks and Rec Department because they have lots of requests for Measure J, and obviously Sunrise Park is part of the library thing, so it became a discussion as to nobody wants to keep coming to trustee meetings unless they're called to trustee meetings, but we don't actually know who we're supposed to be communicating through.
Would it make sense, and I don't know if this can be discussed in a later agenda item, but have you thought about on the Measure J side just having a Sunrise Park ad hoc committee so
No,
that it
no.
would discuss all those things at once? No. I mean, they're all Sunrise Park related.
There will be a Sunrise Park design sort of thing, but there might be representatives for the Park and Rec Department and the library and Measure J and so forth. But no, we're not, and we just know that just like the downtown park was a big project, the library's a big project, and that's the subcommittee that we have.
Right, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought with the city council assignments and are being now, allocated to Council Member Garner and Holstedge that are the subcommittee that's handling the library right now is actually library/Sunrise.
I think
Don't
it's
think so.
Gardner and Middleton.
Holstage.
Holstedge.
Because Christie backed out in the last council meeting.
Well, you haven't been notified of that, have you?
No, it was Holstedge. Middleton backed out.
Middleton backed out and then Holstedge backed out and then Middleton took it in the minutes of the meeting.
Well, we're having a meeting next week, so we'll figure that out. Can we have this discussion on the ad hoc committee? Can we just postpone these thoughts? Because I have some thoughts about it too. So we're going to get to that in a moment. This is our annual meeting as well.
Yeah,
That's fine.
that was the only thing.
It makes sense, and I have some thoughts about it. So let's hold those thoughts if you don't mind until we get to that section, and we'll talk about the assignments there. Friends.
Hi, I will give the Friends report for them today, just to update you. The Friends are busily working on their 3 modernism events. They have a house tour that's going to be happening on February 20th that has been totally sold out. So they're excited about that, and their house is in Rancho Mirage. And so that has gone quite well. They will also be having an exhibit, a daily exhibit, at the Wellwood Library in the community room. All days of modernism from the 13th through the 23rd, from 10 to 4, and it is a atomic landscape dishware from 1955 exhibit. So they're very excited about that and have many volunteers working on that on a daily basis. And then finally, here at the library, after hours on Friday the 21st, they're going to be hosting authors Alan Hess and Michael Stern, who are going to be talking about their book about Hollywood homes that have modernism architecture. So, and that there's still tickets available for that event here at the library. They just also, on Sunday, through Palm Springs Speaks, hosted Dame Joan Collins, and that went well. And then this Friday is Andrea Bernstein at the Camelot at 7 o'clock, this Friday at the 31st. And then next Wednesday, the 5th, at noon, is author Tembi Locke, who will be discussing her book, and we'll be having box lunch and author talk, so that should be very fun. And then they did decide on their annual meeting, they moved it out to May 3rd this year, which is a little bit later than usual, but they were able to work with Smoke Tree Ranch and are going to be having it there. So they're going to be communicating that, so if you're a member of the Friends, you would be invited to their annual meeting. And if you aren't a member of the Friends, I encourage you to join them. And I think that's everything, unless you had a question. Oh, one more thing. Their annual book sale is March 13th through the 15th.
Thank you. I guess I can do the Library Foundation report, and Craig can jump in and help me if something comes up. I would just like to highlight that there is a nominating committee that has been formed by the Library Foundation, and our goal this year is to have 20 total board members by the end of 2020, all those 20s. And we currently have 3 to 4 new members that have been nominated, have been interviewed, and are being submitted to the board, so we're making some progress. One thing I might highlight about that, which the consultants, as you guys know, worked with us, they helped us devise a metric that identifies the current skills of the current board and highlights the skills we're looking for in potential board members, so that when we are interviewing and looking around for people, we can, if someone says, well, what can I do, we can highlight, if you have this kind of background, we surely would love to have you join us. Like, for example, we're looking for an attorney. We're looking for someone with a financial background. So those have helped us a lot with being able to identify members of the community, and we've got a really good applicant pool that's been raising their hands. So that's on its way. We are having an executive board meeting to start working on the annual report that comes to this board, and I shared with them that this board is expecting a full report on the payback of the loan that was given to to establish the foundation, so that'll be part of the annual report. And I think that this annual report will be much more detailed than previous reports because of the work that we've been doing with the consultants, and our plan has been accepted, and so there's a lot of things that will be shared with this group, and that will be in March. Correct, I think it's March or April, I can't remember. I'm sorry, drawing a blank. So that's all I have. Anything that you can think of, Greg?
No, just that the applicants coming forward have wonderful resumes that enhance our abilities to accomplish things.
Absolutely.
Oh, and the foundation decided to participate in the Palm Springs neighborhood meeting picnic.
Oh, yeah, so we will have a table at the One Palm Springs picnic. And we're not going to be next to the Friends, but we're going to be hopefully in the general area. So we'll be there to, with our board members, to highlight what we're doing in the foundation as far as being a little more visible in the community in terms of what our tasks are ahead of us. So
That's on the 21st of March.
yeah, so we'll be there. Any other questions about the foundation, or did I miss anything? Julie, I can't remember, do we adjourn to go to the annual meeting? We just continue?
So you have to adjourn your
Okay,
regular
so-
meeting and then call the annual meeting.
That's what I thought. So we're going to adjourn the regular meeting at 3:19 so that we can go into our annual meeting and go through that process, and then we'll re-adjourn for the legislative action after we complete this process. So we stand adjourned. You got it? You got that? All right. 1A is the report of the nominating committee.
Yes, Harry and I corresponded the early part of January, and we contacted members of the trustees to see if there was interest in our decisions, and we were nominating Ed McBride for board president and David Kelly for board treasurer. We talked to both candidates, and they both responded that they were interested in continuing.
All right, so our slate is myself for president and trustee Kelly for treasurer. So can we get we have to have a motion to accept that?
Yeah,
Or
I'll move
And a
that
second?
the nominations from the committee come forward.
okay, and a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
In deciding the president pro tem, I would like to ask Craig to serve in that capacity. He and I have talked about that. And are you still willing to
Yes,
serve in
I am.
that capacity?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And you all, some of you may recall about a year or two ago when we updated our bylaws, we decided that at this meeting, we would do all standing committee and ad hoc committee assignments so that we don't have any gap in service. So I'd like to talk about that next and also discuss the suggestion we received from the floor on a Measure J ad hoc committee. So as we know just from this past year, you no longer can claim to be new anymore because you've been at least with us for a year. At this point, Kathy, can you share with us how long you're going to be with us, and do you know?
To be with you until they appoint a new person. I said I would continue.
Wonderful.
I did inquire as to where they were with sending out, or, reviewing, and they're not at library yet. They've got 3 other boards to go through first.
Okay.
So I couldn't get a sense of timeline.
Okay.
So I would assume that I would be with you 1 to 2 more meetings.
Okay.
But given the city, it could be much faster, and it could be a little longer.
Okay. Well, we'll be in City Hall next week for another meeting about the building committee, so I'll inquire then as well. I'll stop by and talk to the city clerk. I've had people come up and ask, not that they knew you were leaving, but did we have any vacancies? And I, at that time, only knew of Harry's leaving in the end of June. So I've been spreading the word. I announced it at Rotary not too long ago. So hopefully we have some people that are asking to apply. So, but I'll check on that next week when we're in City Hall. In the meantime, I think you and I had talked about any interest you might have to serve on any of the committees. Currently, you are the building committee. Would you consider holding that until you leave?
I'm fine with holding it
Thank you.
unless you'd rather have somebody else do it. I'm, open on both ends.
Well, my question for you would be, assuming that, and our meeting next week really is to talk about the continuation of the building subcommittee and what that's going to look like for the planning of the programming, which we had recommended to City Council. If you were interested, you could continue on that committee, right? And even into your current or your new role, I think would be very helpful, don't you?
Yeah, the
Would
only
you be
thing
interested?
I won't be able to, in the long term, be as a member of
Okay,
two boards, or
okay.
considering the city considers this the equivalent of board.
So if it's okay with you and the other trustees, what I'd like to recommend next week as we're talking about that committee is that you'll stay a trustee until you're replaced, and then we may transition you into that committee. Because you served on the original committee. I think if you were willing and you've got the capacity, it would be nice to have you on that. Would that be
I'd
okay
very
with you?
happy to do that.
Great, thank you.
I love the projects that you have in front of you.
I think we have one too, don't we? Advocacy, is there anyone, this past year, we had, who was assigned to advocacy?
Right here. Just a minute.
And because we really had nothing going on this past year, that committee was kind of inactive. So are you willing to serve on that, or would you?
There's your
Yeah,
committees.
thank you. Sure. Okay. We had you and Kathy on that. So for now, if it's okay, David, I'm just gonna put you on that until we see what happens with Kathy's assignment. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. Of course, as treasurer, we want you on the budget committee. So, and I served on the budget committee last year, so the two of us can continue because of the budget. On the buildings committee, we had Kathy and
Harry.
So Harry, how do you feel about?
You should put somebody else on, because my
Okay.
term is up in June.
Okay,
I've only got
so,
5 months, and I'll be going.
So Craig, I think maybe since you were also, you were at every meeting we had of the building committee, so you have interest there, is that
Yes,
okay
I
with
do.
you? Okay.
Great, thank you.
And last year, policies and bylaws were myself. I always get bylaws. You're okay with that? Okay, so the two of us.
Can I just, is the budget committee, it seems like that should also be the committee that deals with finance and deals with Measure J.
You're reading my mind.
Yeah, because we don't need,
I
say,
agree.
people on 3 different committees
Yeah. I
and 3
agree.
different hats. It'd be important to.
As a matter of fact, what I was thinking as we were talking about Measure J, the head of the building and the treasurer probably should be on that committee because of what we have ahead of us, the activities around building. So I would suggest that become 2 people who will always be able to know about those 2 projects since they're tied so closely right now. Do I have any objections to that?
Well,
Can
I
you
don't
say that
understand
again?
that because
So,
it sounds like
you and
what
Kathy?
you just said sounds to make, I would probably say that if building and somebody from the budget committee were going to be together on something that really is all about Measure J issues, then we might as well just have a Measure J subcommittee because I don't think you're going to want to attend, even in your short term, want to attend meetings that we might have over the finance director's department about where the interest income is.
No, I was thinking actually that as the chair, you were a piece of that committee.
Of the Measure J?
Well, it would be budget, Measure J, finance, that those were kind of appropriate for the 2 of you, because as the chair, you're always going to know what's happening with
Okay.
the buildings.
Yeah, because the last time, when we made our report to City Council, and I'll know more again next week after we have this meeting, Dr. Reddy was charged with establishing this new committee, and they said at that time the president of the trustees would serve on that committee again.
Right.
So that would make sense. So I would say that you and I would make up this new Measure J committee for now, or ad hoc committee. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, or if, this is the funny part, right? Because already we've just said that the budget committee is you and I, so.
We'll continue on as Measure J then.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think what you're really doing is, we don't care about the rest of your budget, we only care about the
Correct.
Measure J part.
So when we're talking to Measure J, it's about the Measure J commitments we've made.
Right.
All right. So foundation liaisons, friends liaisons, literacy. So currently the foundation liaisons is Craig and myself. We can continue, or if there's anyone who wants to express interest in serving on the foundation. Okay, I'll take that as, we'll continue that. Friends, you're our friend liaison.
Yeah, I have to admit, I did a lousy job of that last year.
What do you mean? I can't imagine you did a lazy job. of anything.
No,
believe that.
no, because I think I might have attended one of the Friends meetings last year. That was about it.
Does that mean you don't want to do it again?
I could commit to doing a better job.
Everyone heard that. It's in the, I can't imagine that you wouldn't. So if you don't mind, will you continue to serve in that capacity?
Sure.
Now, we have two foundation liaisons because the bylaws of the foundation require two, if I remember correctly. That's why we have two. But
I think the reason why you have two is because that's as many as you can have, and there was a lot of interest, but you could only have two.
Okay. All right, so Mr. Cully is going to do the Friends. Literacy last year. I can't figure it out. It was vacant
Later, that's
Yeah.
the word later.
because we didn't have any need for it at that time. Is that right?
I think it was either nobody wanted it, or you just decided not to do it at that time.
It was
You
kind
couldn't pick somebody.
Yeah. Well, let's continue that. I mean, unless staff has a need for any issues around literacy, is there anything that we?
No, we're intrigued ourselves, and we have a desire to keep it going and make it good and all those things. So
Okay.
yeah,
Strategic
It's up to you.
plan seems to be kind of running on its own, and we actually will be meeting next week to talk about some things from the strategic plan, right?
yeah, and maybe that's one that was created when we were working on the strategic plan, and now that the strategic plan is rolling, maybe you don't need that one as an ad hoc. You all can decide what you want.
It's my opinion that the strategic plan is all of our concerns, to be honest. So I think that this is something that if we have an issue around the strategic plan, we bring it to the full group. If we needed to update or look at it again, we could always do an ad hoc on there. But at this point, I think that it's all our responsibility.
Yeah, and ad hoc committees, according to your bylaws, are for the study of special problems or projects. And so they're basically not to be permanent.
Okay, well, then I
Don't you
think
think?
let's suspend that one and also not fill that one. The day will come maybe where the Wellwood patio might be one of those as well. But in the meantime, the Wellwood patio was Kathy and I. So do we need to have someone continue in that capacity to work on Wellwood, or is it time for us to maybe fold that back into buildings?
I don't know that there would be any meetings where you would need to attend anything.
I would think you're attending if there are decisions made,
Yeah.
because you're the staff person
And the
and
project's
your library.
getting ready to roll, so we hope that it will be one of those that we can just close out.
I say we close that out now in terms of an
Yeah.
ad hoc committee.
Yeah.
I mean, our work is done. We will pay the bill when it comes due, right? But there's really nothing else that's going to
Yeah.
evolve us at this point.
Which I learned what that was, and I'll tell you, and it's nothing.
Okay. So unless needed, we will suspend what we have as the Wellwood, so we won't have that
We'll
responsibility.
still receive updates.
Absolutely, as a
Sure. And
full board.
Yeah.
And I would say if something comes before us of concern, we can always say, let's form an ad hoc committee to look at that as we've just learned. But for now, we reviewed plans, we've approved plans.
And
We need a bill, that's all.
if something comes up on an interim basis, Jeannie should be talking with you about it so that
Yeah.
you're informed as to what's going on.
And in my opinion too, the building committee, this could be a building committee topic because it is part of
Yeah.
one of our buildings, right? So it could always go to the building committee. All right. So we dropped 2 and added 1 for the year. So we have a Measure J instead of a strategic plan and will. But I think that's more indicative of what our bylaws require us to do, is these are things that are a topic for this year. Okay,
So Measure J is same as budget.
that's correct. Of course, once we get new members, we'll determine from them their interest. So we might do some reassignments. If someone comes on board and says, I really want to serve on this committee, we can always make some changes there. So that's what it's all about, is taking skills when we get them. So thank you guys all for agreeing to serve again. We appreciate it. And I think, is there anything else that we need to cover before we go back into session?
I move we close the annual meeting.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. All right, back to our agenda. Well, just when we worked out the calendar, guess what?
I move that we set the regular meeting date for the board to be the first Wednesday of each month at 5:30.
Okay,
Second?
can we have some discussion about that and some background?
Starting
That's
next
discussion.
month.
Discussion starts in March.
March. And we are sure that we'll have the meeting room at City Hall to do
Yeah.
it the first Wednesday at 5:30.
That is exactly what we hashed out with all of the commission staff members. We all got together. The city clerk put the entire calendar on the board, and
Wrote in names.
that's the date that we got, and it was surprisingly easy, as long as
Good.
I hope you all are agreeable, because it really works out perfectly with the city.
Now, we, according to our minutes, excuse me, we had decided not to have a February meeting because we're meeting so late in January, and we were gonna have such an early meeting in March. Do we still agree with that?
Yeah.
Because it's just a matter of 3 or 4 weeks away before we meet
Right.
again. Okay. Unless, of course, something comes up as a result of any meetings that we're having next week. But I think at this point, we'll still say that our next official meeting will be March 4th, thank you. At
Thank you.
5:30 at City Hall, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes,
every first Wednesday after that.
yes.
You feel City Hall's gonna be locked in for the remainder of spring?
We're good. I reserved the room. We're on the calendar.
Okay.
Yeah. Are you having concerns?
No, I just wanna make sure I show up at the right place at the right time.
Yeah. So I still have an issue with the first Wednesday in April.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's going to be an issue or not, but I'm not going to be here.
Well, I mean, I think that we all know that there's going to be meetings each of us are going to miss. So
Yeah, I'm just, yeah,
You're-
as long
Even
as you
I
have a
miss
quorum.
sometimes.
Yeah, that's my question.
we have a quorum, and if there's any, you and I can meet before, and if there's any business as a result of the finance, I can present that on your behalf to the finance committee. Okay. Our budget committee. Thank you. All right, building
You have-
committee.
You didn't vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have a second?
Yeah.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you for keeping me on. Excuse me. Pardon me. Building committee update.
We have a meeting next week.
Yeah, so let me share with you guys that, of course, for those of you know, we went through October with a buzz to get the committee to make a recommendation to City Council. As a matter of fact, we have one of the members of that committee with us in the audience. Thank you, Wendy, for being here. And we made a report on time. We met all of our deadlines, only to be hit with elections and holidays, which really kind of postponed a lot of things. So I have been in communication several times now with Dr. Reddy and with our city council representatives. And we finally are able to schedule a meeting on the 4th.
February 4th at 5 o'clock
Where
in the small conference room at City Hall.
Yeah, so the agenda will be to talk about next steps for the recommendation from the building committee, and also the Sunrise Park. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I will know more. Of course, I'll report next time we meet the outcome of that. But I'm really hoping that we can start moving ahead with naming this next committee to get started. I raised concerns over the fact that we as a board have committed to spending Measure J funds this fiscal year. And we with blood said that we wouldn't let another year pass without spending the money that David brought to us and remind us that we had there, along with some other funding to get the process started. So that's first on the agenda, and then identifying the next steps for the planning and the programming plan for the building. Is there anything else that you've heard on the agenda?
I learned from watching the Measure J Commission meeting last week that there is probably a project going to the next city council meeting to start the study for the park and the library, but that would be discussed at this meeting.
Correct.
So I think.
So that's the strategic plan, setting up a new strategic plan. With,
Mark Rios study.
With Mark Rios.
Yeah, a study for the park and the library.
Good.
But that's yet to come.
Okay.
But
And
that's.
that would come out of allocated funds already.
Mhm.
And that would that come out of our allocated funds?
Measure J funds, yes.
Probably.
Good.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
The other topic I wanted to make sure doesn't get lost is the fact that you may recall, as part of the strategic plan, we allocated trust funds as well as we're using Measure J to remodel the Fry building and to establish new meeting rooms in this building. And we definitely heard loud and clear from our community that they would like for us to do that. So that's on my list to discuss as well and see where we are with that. I don't want that to get lost in all of the other things that are going on. Those are things that we felt we could do
Yes.
now.
Do you know if any of that's happened? I know the city engineers came into one of our meetings to discuss it, but have they done anything with it?
Do you want me to tell you 11D's answer? The update on 11D, the
Go for
J.C.
it.
Fry building, is that I was told that they pulled the staff report because they wanted to wait for this bigger master plan of the entire park.
Oh, goodness.
I
No,
know.
we don't want that.
So it's on standby. That's what I was told by the engineering department.
What we should do is raise that in the meeting
Yes.
next week.
It's
Right.
on my agenda as well.
So it should be, we should ask to have it as an agenda item.
Yeah.
We will bring it up at Measure J because engineering is at our meetings and we know that the pavilion is going ahead, so there's no reason for J to be stopped. So
Thank
I
you.
don't quite know where that's coming from,
I don't know either.
but we will certainly bring that up at our next meeting.
It's not an issue of funding. We've got the funds to do it.
That's correct.
So and this was part of the strategic plan and community input. So we definitely need to have that on our agenda for next week when we meet.
And that can alleviate some of the concerns in the short term. If and when it gets done.
Yeah.
I have two questions. Is the meeting on the 4th at 5 o'clock, is that open to the public?
It should be a public meeting.
It's in the small conference room. So it's called an ad hoc, so I don't think it is.
I would ask, usually meetings are open to the public and members
Is
of
it
the board
posted?
can attend as long as they don't talk so that you don't break the
Well, I know, but they called it an ad hoc, which means that it's not going to be posted, and it's in the smaller room.
It's an ad hoc with city council, right?
Yeah, Christy Holsedge, Grace Garner, ad hoc subcommittee,
Okay.
new library and Sunrise Plaza meeting.
Can you just confirm that? I know that
Mm-hmm.
as to whether that's possible, I think the more people from this group that hear that discussion, the better.
Well, and then the two of you can report back at the next meeting.
Right, but it's still,
It'll take time, but
it's still valuable if, and it doesn't break the Brown Act if somebody's just quietly listening.
Well, let me back up. I mean, I don't want to feel like we're just forging ahead. Trustees, I mean, are you in agreement that those are things that we really need to discuss? I mean, I'm concerned that we're gonna get stuck behind a master planning process for Sunrise Park, and we could see this project be delayed for years, which is not at all what we had recommended. I think that we need to push for the things that we approved for this year.
And we do want an assessment of the library. I mean, irrespective of the master plan, we need to have that assessment in terms of what the costs would be, what the costs are involved in it. I don't think anybody can talk cogently about new library versus replacement library on that site unless we have some sense of magnitude of the repairs that have to be done and what's possible.
Are there any other topics, or if you guys agree or disagree with what we're talking about here, is there any concern?
I just have another question. Are you
Yeah.
talking about Sunrise Park, or you're also talking about Mizell and the Boys and Girls Club?
Mhm.
And are they gonna be at the table for this meeting coming up?
On the 4th?
No.
It's really, it's me insisting that we pick up where we left off on the building committee, subcommittee recommendation back in October, and where are we? So, no.
Well,
The Parks and Recreation Commission is spearheading the park master plan, and they have invited the stakeholders to a meeting, but that is not what he's talking about.
No.
And the master
No.
plan that came
Was I
out
doing
of,
it? No.
out of our discussions was that people said that we needed, that any redo of the library on that site would fail unless there was a new master plan for the entire site. So that, I'm not sure what Parks and Rec is doing with spearheading.
That's what the master plan is. They are in charge of parks. So they are.
But it's
taking-
not, it isn't just a Parks issue, it's how the whole site is used.
I understand that, but they.
Because the site fails right now.
I understand that, but that's where the city is putting the lead, because they are the parks. They are inviting other people. The city's doing the master plan, but it's under the umbrella of Parks and Rec, just like downtown would have been under Parks and Rec. It's a park. The library, Mizell, the stadium, all those are shareholders at the park, correct? I don't think that they've gone out with a public, input yet.
Now, I will admit, I was in that meeting until 11 o'clock that night. I was freezing to death. I could have very easily dozed off, but I doubt it. But I don't recall that our recommendation was that you must do a master plan before you proceeded with the library. How did that occur is what I want to know. Because that was not in our recommendation.
It was in the recommendations of the two architects from our group. In the building committee, it came from Maria Song and Michael Hirschbein, who were everybody in the group sort of defaulted to that site.
Correct.
But there wasn't agreement about whether you remodeled, you built new, but they felt that there needed to be not a master plan, but a specific plan for how the uses would integrate in the site, but also a first decision. You had to look at, you have to look at the library. So it did come out of the discussions from our group, but it wasn't, I never knew that it got cited in Parks and Rec and that it kind of spun into something else.
Well, first of all, our recommendation was to stay here. That's what we said. And having written the report, you're right. We said that it would be nice to have a master plan to guide this site going forward, but we did not say you have to have a master plan first. And if it's evolved into that, I'm concerned about that, because we're talking about years before we could see anything else happen with the library. And by the way,
but are you really surprised?
Yes, I'm surprised because I was there that night when city council all said we accept this, and our next steps are to get working on it.
But even I was supporting the building in downtown, and one of the things that I wrote in a letter to the city council was that I think there should be a master plan for Sunrise Park.
So did we.
So I don't know why anyone's surprised that anyone would just take a look at Sunrise Park as an entirety before making any particular decisions about the library.
The recommendation was to begin the process of planning, doing feasibility studies, go into the next step of what it would cost to do this building at this site. It was not tied to a master plan has to be established in order to do those next steps. My concern, if all those next steps are kicked behind a master plan, it could be a long time before we move to the next steps. And then we start all over again.
But I'm not surprised.
It did, if you went back and listened to the summation on it, it was not a very clear summation. It was put in Dr. Reddy's hands with the suggestion that the master plan be done by Rios and Clementi, which is the firm that did the downtown park. So those pieces did come out of the very end of that discussion. No decision was made in that discussion as to whether or not the library would be rebuilt in the same place with expansion, without expansion, or a new building. And so, but I thought we also needed an assessment, an actual assessment of the building, and I thought that came out of the meeting as well.
I don't disagree with anything that I've heard already because,
Yeah.
there were certain things that were discussed that were ahead of anything that had to do with the master plan.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, and the assessment was certainly part of it. But even when you logically start thinking about, once you've
Yeah.
discussed that, you start thinking, well, how does that fit into everything else? And it's almost a cart before the horse in a way, in my opinion, if you start doing assessments on individual buildings in that piece of real estate without thinking about what you want to do with the whole real estate.
Yeah, and Park and Rec has already put forth a recommendation for pickleball courts between the library and myself. So of course everybody has to stop and reevaluate
And
what's happening.
and it's not to blame the building committee because, the building committee had a particular charge. It was just simply to say, where do we prefer to have this library? It wasn't thinking strategically about what would happen if they say the library stays here. What does that mean for the rest of city planning?
But the hard part about it staying there with a park plan that doesn't work is that they will do this.
We'll do what? I'm sorry.
Wait forever.
Wait forever. And I think that's part of our charge at this meeting is to say that what we can't do is wait forever.
Absolutely, because if we're already out in the community, we have a foundation. We're asking people to join. Why have a foundation in place if we're going to be sitting around for 3 or 4 years for a plan? We're wasting people's times, and we'll never get their attention again.
Well, instead of thinking that, because that's a worst case scenario, probably the better thing to be thinking about is what can we do to actually move the library project along? I mean, what is the incentive to the city to start pushing the library first before everything else?
At least at the same time, so that we're evaluating the building, going through what is needed in the new library so we know what the programming would be, and getting a design either of the rework or a new building.
Because the only thing the public has said at this point is that we want to be here.
Yeah.
The public hasn't said that there's an urgency to do anything with this library other than to stay here. So unless we raise the urgency about this library, I don't see how the city is going to do anything else but to look at the whole thing as a Sunrise Park.
That's why this next week's meeting, I think, is very important.
Yeah.
If we're being told that, thank you for your recommendation, we're going to now do a master plan on the park before we even get to the library. I mean, I think we need to know that, because we are moving forward with the foundation, organizing around what's next. We have
commitments of
we-
money from Measure J. and we want
absolutely.
more.
We've had people. How many people were in those meetings we had every week that are walking out of there assuming that there's going to be something. It may not. They didn't walk out thinking in a year. Maybe 5 years. But I'm just concerned about the expectations that have been set and need to be reset.
I think the only expectations that were raised were because of the fact that there was new property that was coming to the city that got people all excited about the prospects for a new library. And there wasn't going to be any excitement about this location until
I
that
disagree.
happened. I don't think so.
I disagree.
And then so the excitement was built, it crescendoed, and then now we're back with this, looking at this same real estate.
Kathy, we were there. I mean, the outpour that we got from people loving this building and wanting to stay in this location, and the fact that there would be something done with this location was clear. I mean,
I don't think there's anybody in the community who would say that there's not things that need to be done with this building. But I don't think that they're I don't know if they feel that urgency that was driven by the idea of, well, let's do something new and different. And I know the passions. I mean, being somebody who supported a new building, believe me, I got a lot of passionate people coming up to me saying they grew up in this community. This building meant a lot to them. This is some place that they relied on. This is some place they bring their children to. There's a lot of emotion about this building. So, but where has that emotion gone to now that we're now part of this Sunrise Park?
Well, I think the public testimony that was there, was very clear that they wanted us to be in this park. I didn't hear anyone say we want the park to be improved first. That's where I guess I'm coming from. Is I don't remember us ever saying that we would spend time trying to organize this park or this land before we would do anything about the library.
Well, then I think that's a message you need to take on February 4th. That's a message you need to hammer down, and you need to bring back notes from the building committee that support that and say, look, you're going to misrepresent the public trust if you rearrange the priority on this library building.
And I agree. And if the answer is no, we're going to wait, then okay, I think that we need to reset those expectations with the community and work accordingly. And that means we have to go back to Measure J and say there's no way we're going to spend the money that we've agreed to, because it won't be spent. And I remember us committing to them that
or the library foundation and saying that there was
exactly. If we're not going to use that money, there's other people who need that money. Why would we want to hold that up, right?
Except that we want a library that functions with bathrooms that function, with meeting groups that work, with the appropriate books and collections for our community with, I think if we give it all up, we just go back to a library that should have been remodeled and worked on 20 years ago and gets put off at every single, and I don't think we want to give it up.
Trust me, I'm not saying I want to give it up at all. That's why I've asked for this meeting, so we can get clarification, and I can be passionate about it, as we all know. But I think that we just need some clarification. If decisions are being made without coming back to us and saying, "Hey, this is what we're talking about," that to me that's at least the reasonable request.
Yeah, it's rude.
Especially knowing the work we put into that. Okay, we beat that to death. Any other? Thank you, guys. We'll report back to you on that. We'll verify if it's a public meeting, and so that if you guys anyone wants to attend. Okay. Wellwood Patio.
Well, when I ran to my office, I also went to check Finance Plus, our finance system, to find out what was charged to Wellwood Patio. And it was actually a charge that was from last year that was carried forward to this fiscal year. So it was a David Volz design charge for $3,820. So that was his charges from last year.
And those are appropriately ours.
Yes, that was yours. That was his. That was the redesign before we even got the extra money from the city and had that big meeting. I think this was part of all of that.
Or the Wellwood patio.
So Wellwood patio, I talked to engineering and they said that they're working on all of that to get it started, and I am going to set my personal timeline to say by the summer this will be done.
What, the patio?
Yes.
Don't,
We'll be at a ribbon cutting
David,
this summer?
don't collapse.
Yes. Yes, and I asked about a groundbreaking, they said they would prefer a ribbon cutting, so we're already thinking about formalities.
You're talking 2020, right?
Uh-huh.
Not next summer or the
Uh-huh.
summer after, okay?
Well, I don't
Be
want
clear.
to. I don't want to overpromise and then something not happen. But actually, the timeline's very short, so I'm lengthening it a lot.
Summer 2020, the minutes will reflect,
Oh no.
So have they given
in
you-
pencil.
Yes.
Are the contracts executed?
I don't know that for sure, but I know that it went to council and got approved. They have to do their thing, and engineering said they're doing their thing. I don't know that they've gotten their start time or date or any of that stuff yet. So I don't know. But I know the timeline, but I'm not telling you the timeline because it's very short, and I don't want to promise a very short timeline, and then we have
But this is
some
the time that's
surprises.
been promised to you.
It's in the project. You can go look at the project
Sure.
and see the timeline that they've been given, the directive of how long.
So all
I'm
the,
estimating 5 months.
all the hurdles that we've gone through in terms of it being reviewed and back and forth, all that's done. So now it's really a matter of putting a shovel in the ground and making it happen.
Mhm. Yes.
Okay.
It's actually executing the building permits and all the drawings.
I'm sure that's true.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there's some work that has to be done once, but it's probably much closer. And they should be able to give you a timeline for when they think the contract will be executed and what they
Yeah.
think the start date is.
And they haven't given me a start date yet.
So there's still
As
some
of,
work.
as of today.
Unless they
And-
strike oil.
So-
Well,
so
or a
why
burial
don't we
ground.
have an informal party the day they start construction? I'll bring the champagne.
Thank you.
And we'll,
We're also very concerned about accessibility to the building because the ADA access is in the back.
Which should have been considered all along, right?
It will, but I've already raised it and said, please tell me how you're going to handle this. And they said that they were going to do something where they phase it or make a pathway. They're not going to do anything off the front door, but they still want to keep access through the back. Or maybe there will be a specific time, a very short period of time, maybe 2 weeks when it's not accessible because of construction. So we're aware of it and trying to be accommodating for the community.
Surprised they didn't put some sort of a temporary access in the front of the building during this construction.
During Modernism Week,
Yeah.
put a ramp, a cardboard ramp. I
Yeah.
mean,
Not cardboard, but,
you know, plywood.
Yeah. No, we talked about that.
so that exhibit that we're gonna have in there will be inaccessible?
Well,
No, no.
we don't know when it's gonna start. That's
I see.
we do have a concern that it might be during the Friends exhibit, but no, I mean, we don't believe that it will be during that
I
time.
don't think so.
I'm
Because
not
it's very soon.
concerned.
And that's like only in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I trust you on this.
yeah.
So
It's private sector.
I'm very excited about the project. We're coming up on, and just like next week, it's our 5-year anniversary
Yep.
for being
5-year
open.
what?
For being open.
Reopening.
Okay.
The reopen. 1941 was the beginning of time for Wellwood.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, 11A, review board practices. What are we including in the packet?
This is something that you had asked for to talk about what we are including, what you want to see. Do you want to see the financials the way we do them? Do you want the statistics? So this is your time to talk about the board packets.
Okay. And I think this came as a result of our last meeting where Trustee Kelly was talking about looking at some of the statistics and some of the things that you guys have provided in annual reports. That's kind of where we got off on this, I think, right?
Yeah.
So, and we decided we'd come back to this meeting and looking at the package you just sent, right? Which basically has always had, of course, our agenda minutes, the financial reports, and then any other topic that required a handout, correct?
Right. I also think that we were wanting to talk about as a group, or you were wanting to talk about as a group, whether you keep your money in your cash account or you put it in the future library projects, and maybe that's a budget committee recommendation, or?
I don't think that's part of what I was thinking here.
Okay.
Because if you recall, staff was saying that, putting together the minutes and all,
yeah.
it really is very time consuming, and you guys are doing that in addition to your day job. And, what do we need in order to conduct our business in this package that you send out every month and you post for the public, correct?
That's
what this
right, yeah, the
discussion's
minutes
about.
too, specifically, because if you look at city council minutes and all the minutes of other organizations, it's very motion driven, motion made, seconded, vote, action taken, or no action taken.
That's where I'd like to make some changes on what our agenda looks like, so that it identifies what we're voting on, who's first and who's second, who's abstaining. It'll make it much easier for the minute taking.
What did you say, did you say agenda?
On the agenda pages.
Oh, okay.
to Design them so that there's less minute taking. I'd be willing to work on that with anybody if there's an interest in doing that.
So would we like to take this and come back with a recommendation to staff, or how would you like to do this?
Maybe the two of us could work together on this. Jeannie would and
Sure.
bring something to the board to review. We'll bring a draft.
Okay, including what we currently get and what that looks like? Okay.
Yes.
There are a
Um,
lot of ways this can be shortened
Okay.
and just report on actual actions taken as opposed to who gave a report and what got said.
Well, and now we're really making a giant effort to record every meeting and to post it online, whether it's an audio recording or a video recording. And so, as an example, when I watched a section of the Measure J meeting, I learned a lot. And their minutes aren't posted right now, so it's kind of this instantaneous. You can go get straight from the horse's mouth what was said, and so maybe with the advancement of technology, maybe the way that we handle our packets changes. And now we are required in the city to post the entire packet on our website, not just the agenda and the minutes. We're required to post everything. And then if we have added handouts, we are just required to keep them on file. We're not required to post them on our website. As an example, I would definitely, there's a letter I passed out a thank you letter that I sent to a person. I don't want that on our website. It's got their home address. So if I did include that in your packet, I would redact the address, because we don't need, well, and maybe people don't need to know that so-and-so donated $100, and that ends up.
But you know what,
triggering some other
actually,
things.
that raises something that I don't know, maybe at some point we might want to consider, is that given the lack of public involvement in our meetings on a general basis, that the more information we give the public, the more they might be interested in attending. So, for example, even having this with a redacted address on it would actually give somebody the idea, if they ever did go to the website and actually downloaded this, that, I've never sent in a donation to the library. I could do that myself. Look at that. And I have even the address of where it's supposed to go to now. So you give up something when you don't communicate to the public.
But maybe we can do it so that it's easy for the staff to do and still get that information out. But
Yeah.
let's see what we can do with it.
Here's what I would, having been on this board now 4 years, I think that, you know, we kind of accept, I've always just accepted that what we get is what's always been provided. So I think that what I'd like to hear is, what do other boards and commissions provide, first of all? Why do we provide what we've been providing, and why is it necessary? And is there a better way of doing it based on those two recommendations? Clearly, if we're doing more than other boards and commissions are doing because it's all online and that's the preferred way the city wants to do it, that makes sense to me. But why are we getting the information that we've always gotten? Someone down the road sitting in these chairs asked for this information. And why are we still getting it? Is it still useful? I think it's time to review it clearly. And I don't want the staff doing more work than they have to. I'd rather, if we need something, we're putting your time to better use, if that makes sense.
And I'd also like the staff to consider if there are some reports that we don't get that might be more useful to us that we don't know about.
I think as a result of this recommendation, that should spur that conversation. So, okay, if you come and recommend that here's what the new packet will look like, and then we can start asking, well, how do we get this information, or what is it missing that we might want to look at ways of adding that information to it. Because I remember the last time we changed this, Harry, correct me, but we started putting down the committee reports, if for no other reason that if that committee didn't have a report, we skipped it, but we didn't want to forget if that committee had something to report. So it was kind of like, it just was on the agenda to remind us that we may have something going on, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I remember us doing it, and then we're not doing that anymore.
Well, it does take up paper, and
I'm not asking you to defend it, I'm just saying,
Well,
remember?
We should talk about that, because it makes it longer, it makes, it's, if you don't have an item to discuss, I personally feel like it shouldn't be on the agenda, or if there's nothing to discuss, then there should be no item, and maybe discussion items aren't what you should be doing at all. Maybe you should only be talking about action items.
Well, if we go to a city council-like process where it's posted online, when you're actually in the meeting, I mean, you can pick up certain items from the agenda, but most of that's on the screens. People are following along, right? I mean, it's electronic. It would mean we receive it electronically, correct? Is that what you're suggesting, that
No.
you try to eliminate paper?
No, I'm just talking about if it's only an update, you don't put it on the agenda. If there's no action that's necessary, we just do a section, because
But that
the
to me
way
goes
the
contrary
agenda's...
to Brown Act. I mean, so.
Well, the way the agenda's written, it's legislative action, and so these items are technically
Updates.
supposed to be actions,
Right.
like you need to take a vote, and then you have a report section, maybe it's
That makes
something
more sense.
different in
Well, this is
that
what we
way.
had, I thought. We had a report. Remember we had committees listed. Am I dreaming this?
Yeah, you
guys?
did, you
There was
did.
a section that had all the committees listed, and what we would do is we would go through them and would say, is there a report for the building committee this time?
Mhm.
No. Is there a
Yeah.
report from the strategic plan committee? Yes. And they'd make their report, and that was kind of that place marker, right?
Mhm.
And then these would be more things that we need to decide, right? Or make.
Right, yeah, like you need to vote on.
Okay. Well, I'll look for you
meeting
guys
day.
to look at that, but, yeah.
Maybe this is not the way it should be. And then we had done some things where we had put the foundation at the top with the friends, and we had put the staff at the top for a while.
Correct.
And then the staff ended up going to the end.
Well, we did that so that the friends and the foundation could come, make their report and leave.
Right,
Well, they don't
right.
even show up anymore, so I mean,
They have conflicts today because it's a weird day.
I have to leave.
Okay.
we still have a quorum. Thank you.
Gotta pick up my son.
Stay healthy.
So I think that if Craig, if you would work on that and
I'll bring some drafts, let the trustees look at it, and we can add and subtract and make it flow better. and then we'll also know what we're voting on and what we're just supposed to listen to.
All right. Any other thing from anyone else about this? I mean,
I just think that making the minutes shorter is a really good idea because it takes staff time and we really only need to report on the things we've decided to do.
yeah. Once again, I'm open for that.
I think so too.
Okay. Especially if others are doing that as well.
Yeah, we should look and see what their minutes look like.
Absolutely.
If you could bring in the minutes from the other
Mhm.
subcommittees, and I'll bring the ones from the nonprofits. And,
Afterwards, we should set a meeting, see if we can set a meeting date.
great. Thank you.
Okay, the next one was library annual reports and questions of further discussion memo.
The questions are all really good. I don't know what the answers are that way, except I'd like to know how you count people. When you said you counted busload of children as one.
No, we don't count a busload of children. We count them with the door counter. We have a laser counter that counts at the door. So when people come through the door, we count them with our door counter. But I think, David, was that the question about if we have a school visit, we don't track school visits, or when we go out. As an example, today I went out to St. Teresa School and did career day, and I saw 3 classrooms, but I don't count that in my statistics anywhere. It's just part of my outreach package or program, and we don't count that because our state library, who mandates that we turn in our statistics, they don't ask for that number, and our goal is to track long-term effects as far as we might have a school come once. We don't count it special because they're counted when they walk through the door as door count, and then our goal is to increase long-term use of the library and overall repetitive exposure. And it's hard to count things like that. It's hard to count repeat use, but I mean, that's the goal. There are some things that you just can't count, but you feel or you see it in the long term when you go, oh, the programs went up, or we started a new program and it was great and popular. And
Do you count everybody who participates in the programs?
yes, yeah, we do program attendance, and so yes, we do count
But
that.
I guess the question is, where does that get reflected?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I would like to say thank you, David, for the memo. Clearly, you spent some time looking at this, and once again, thank you for doing the analysis. I think that in the past, this body has probably never really gotten into this depth of questioning year-over-year statistics, and I think that what I'd like to ask you as part of this memo, your questions clearly are trying to, let's work together to see if we can figure out how we can make the place better. That was very clear to me, and I appreciate that. I think that because we don't do that very often, can you share with us why you feel the need to do that now? And does that make sense? Is what when you looked at that annual report year over year, what do you think we can do as a body to give staff feedback or question to help them make it better?
Well, I don't know if it's so much a question of giving the staff feedback to make it better. I think it's more as a part of our duty as trustees to understand the operations of the library and be able to interpret that for the public. And when we are asked to be on building committees where we're going to ask the public for their opinion about certain things, or we're on programming committees where we're asking the public for certain things, I think we ought to know what it is that we have been doing in the past based on a lot of the information we've been giving to the public. And I think one of the detriments, I think, to having an annual report that just reports what happened in the last year without looking at trends is that you kind of miss what might have been caught, that needs to be caught. Trends that need to be given some attention. And we only have these numbers to work with. And I don't think anybody in the past has ever looked at these numbers on a year-to-year basis to establish trends. So I wanted to present the trends so that we could actually look at them and be knowledgeable about them. And then ask questions about, how are we serving the public? Especially when we're trying to think about things like, new programming. If you're looking at the number of people who are coming in through the door, the number of people who are getting new library cards, we want to know whether or not is it the programming that's actually attracting them or not. And if we simply say the numbers are up, we're all doing a great job, then we're not saying, well, what is it that we're doing right? And in the inverse, if the numbers are down, we want to know, well, what are we doing that we could be doing better? So, and I think in part of this process, then we might just realize that maybe we need to be reporting different numbers, or maybe we need to find numbers that are more representative of our successes than what we've been publishing lately. I don't know. And, and honestly, one of the challenges I think that Jeannie has given me to some extent is to really to find out whether or not there are other library systems that might be reporting library numbers differently, or maybe on a statewide level there might be, maybe our apples don't match their apples, So, but we don't know that until we actually start having the conversation, and we can't have the conversation until we actually look at it. So this is our attempt to look at it.
I can speak from my own personal experience of working in libraries most of my life. That and by the way, when I read these reports, I understand what's being reported there, maybe from just from the way I think, right? So I hear what you're saying. I think that for me, this isn't, what am I trying to say? I think that one thing we should think about is there is requirements from the state on certain reporting, right? So the state says to all libraries in the state of California, here is a set of reports that we want from you every year, because that decides how much money they give them, right? So I think it might be nice to see what those numbers are. What are they being requested? And I know that changes sometime, correct, from year to year, depending.
A little bit, every once in a while. And it's all online.
And by the way,
you can go look at it right now.
I will make a harsh statement here. The state probably would say, the state library would say to Jeannie, we don't care if you have people coming in the door or not. They do, but whether your programs reflect what your community needs, we want to know based on what they have to report federally.
Yes.
Up, right? So they're really looking for numbers that decide how much money they get from the federal grant programs. Mm-hmm. I think that what we should do is start there to see if they make sense to us and how we're tying back to them. I think what you're looking at is more of what reflects our community needs. And I think it's timely because we're about to go into the next phase of HOPE, our building program, where we're going to start getting into these kinds of things. And we're going to need to know, if we're going to plan a building, do we need a building full of books, or do we need a building full of technology? What do we need? I think those are the best questions to ask from that. So I think we separate, if we can, because you're keeping a set of books and numbers that you're required to by the state. Mm-hmm. And I think it would be kind of interesting to know what those are and why.
Yes.
And the time allocation that you're having to keep up with that. And then I think it's a fair expectation from the trustees when you produce an annual report that we ask questions like, well, by the way, we're not saying we don't trust your judgment on this, but when you come out to us and say, circulation is up, online is down, that goes contrary maybe to what we think. Talk to us about that, Jeannie. Why is that? Because I think David is right. We're out in the community talking about these things. People ask me, "Oh, can I go to the library and use a computer?" Well, yeah, that's what there's there, right? So it educates us as your ambassadors as to what you're measuring and what you need. And that's my opinion. I'm not trying to speak on your
Part of the
behalf.
question is understanding who the users of the library are.
Exactly.
One of the things I learned last night in another meeting was that Palm Springs is aging quickly, which isn't what you think when you think about young people coming downtown, and that we're losing, I mean, I knew we were losing families with children, but if families with children are major users, the trend, a trend that's reflected in those demographics may be reflected in these demographics without there being anything different or not wonderful that the staff is doing. And so it's trying to look at, more ebooks might mean more older people don't physically go to the library, but they take out ebooks because they still read. And so those trends may actually reflect our population, but what we may want to do is more programs to bring people in. So that's kind of the way I would think about them, is that if you combine it with some of the best demographics around, I mean, you can look at some of the best demographics and decide if you were going to do a small little lending library someplace, where would the children be? And so
I have you're giving me all kinds of ideas. The statistics that we give to you is just a snapshot of just plucked highlights of what we actually collect and report. The state library has a full list of all of our statistics in every library, every public library in California. So you can actually download it as an Excel spreadsheet and then sort by population or sort by anything, budgets, whatever, and then you can do some comparisons. There are hundreds of categories. Poor Julie does this annual report, and
I remember that.
it's insane the information they want. So maybe, and we've been doing this I know way longer than I've been here, but at least 7 years we've been reporting these things. And do you really care about interlibrary loan? Well, what that's in our annual report, but the number of interlibrary loan items, do you care? Maybe you care more about something else. And so maybe it's something that, maybe this is one of the things that we revamp what you get.
We might care if you care. I think for me, if you said to us, at the
I
annual.
don't think that's on there. So
Let's say that, once a year as we talk about our strategic plan, if staff says this year our focus is getting more, teenagers in this building, and here's how we're monitoring that. That means more to me. I want to see that. I want to see how you're doing. What can I do to help? But, if it's interlibrary loan, just because you have to report that to the state, it reports that to the Fed, so everybody gets credit for interlibrary loan and the money is swapped around. I don't think that doesn't interest me as much.
And now they don't even swap the money anymore.
Yeah.
We used to get money from other
But the only
jurisdictions.
reason why it's interesting to me now is because I can see a 7-year trend. So if I see in a 7-year trend that interlibrary loans requested has gone from 1668 in 2012 to 2013 to 869, then why? Because it's cut in half.
I'll tell you one word.
Fee.
Amazon.
Fee, and we're charging, it's not.
And we're
free
charging
anymore.
more.
Well, see, I would.
I say Amazon though.
I guess this is where the old librarian comes in. I would stick up and say you're probably getting more materials people want, you're listening to what people are asking for.
Could very
And you
well
could
be.
very well be turning
Yeah.
into more of a popular lending library because that's what people are coming to ask for. Remember in the old days, a lot of interlibrary loan was tied to reference materials and research, which you're right, that's Google, you can get that online. People are now coming and they're finding what they want,
Project
right?
Gutenberg's online.
No one's coming up to you and saying, can you get me this book? Because of, I will tell you, yeah,
Yeah.
probably Amazon.
Yeah.
But more importantly, you have what they want.
But you know
There's
what?
so many
but the
anecdotes.
point is that you come with a wealth of experience in libraries. I don't come from a wealth of experience in libraries, and probably
recognize
most of the community doesn't come from a wealth of experience in libraries. But yet, I'm charged with being able to communicate what the
I hear you.
library is supposed
I
to be
support
doing.
you 100% on that.
So
I also
I want you
think
to understand.
some of the like if we think about problems or trends, families leaving Palm Springs, they're priced out. Families look at this building and they don't want to come here because there's that perception of
Danger.
safety issues and around us, and so, and our library, we've got parking problems. Did you have trouble?
But you know, and you know,
There are these
and I know
things.
all these things, but how those things didn't really get discussed in the building committee over the summertime is just astounding to me. I mean, they got
we did.
it got, you know, on a peripheral basis, but not so much to, you know, for some reason it seemed to me that the focus tended to be this building against other buildings as opposed to this building. Do we really understand what all the flaws of this building come with?
And you're absolutely correct. It was putting a process, it wasn't the right form. We should have done that first before we had that discussion. But for all reasons we know, we were asked to pick a spot first. Now we're going to get to what you're asking about, where this kind of information will be very helpful in us determining what's inside these four walls and how it looks.
I just want people to get excited somehow
I agree.
about the library again.
we're
And,
doing
and
here-
mitigate a lot of what I see here that's not very positive. But, you know, I think, you know, if we can make a better story out
But-
of this.
I would say also your awareness campaign is going to help us bring positivity to the to the community. There are a lot of people who are doing ebooks now, so that's why I think our door count is down. We've changed some of our lending rules, and so many different lending rules. When I came here, you could only get 7 DVDs for 7 days. Now you can get 30 for 2 weeks. We have automatic renewals. Just bring it back.
So
Find
what do we want to
ways
do
of-
with this, though? Do we want to actually answer the questions? Do we want to, how do we want to deal with this?
I would like to suggest, if the trustees agree, that we put on the agenda for the next 3 meetings a more discussion about statistics. And I'd like to hear from you guys, for example, what are you required to keep? I don't, and why? Explain that to us first, and let us understand.
We're not
that.
sure
Well, I
why.
mean, and then what's important to you to help you do your jobs here for this community? What are you then looking at?
Mm-hmm.
And then allow us to then ask these kinds of questions that David has brought up, so that we better understand what you're tracking and how you're very proud of the annual report. We want to be proud with you. We want to understand it, I guess is what I'm saying.
And I want you to remember there are so many positive things. I don't want you to all focus on
I don't think we're
the
saying that it's not.
negativity.
We're not, don't be
Well,
defensive. We're not saying that at all. No, we're not. I'm not. Are you,
No, it's
David?
just
I
a
mean, I don't
change.
think you are.
There's things that are up, there's things that are down. Maybe it will help us to understand why these
And
changes
the trends that you see and how you handle them,
Mhm.
how you think
How we
about them.
adapt, because
Yeah,
we
and how
are
you adapt,
adapting.
Because that to me is the most interesting piece of, demographics only really mean trends to me that we're gonna have to deal with.
The other thing, Ginny, and I know this might be more work, and I'm sorry, but you're doing outreach, and this does not give you credit for that. And I really think that's an important thing that you do. You're connecting people with the library, you're introducing them to different ideas and concepts. I'd like to know what type of outreach you're doing, and I don't know if you can do it number-wise, like how many classes you reach a year.
Mhm.
That would be interesting for me to know. I don't know about David or
I agree.
board members, but
Absolutely.
I think that the ultimate for me, what I want to get this is education of the trustees ultimately at the end of this, so that you're using your statistics and how your program to educate us on how, again, we can be your ambassadors. And we're gonna have questions, clearly, and you're gonna have insights into librarianship that we're not gonna have, like in a library loan or whatever. You can say, you can start, the first thing, Amazon is taking some of our business away from us. Google is taking our business away from us.
Actually, we want them to take our interlibrary loan business away from us
And
because it's very labor
and here's
intensive
the
and
impact.
costly. It
Here's
costs
the
us
impact to
so
our
much
program
money.
and our statistics. But we know that you're not just closing the doors because Amazon's out there.
No.
You're finding other ways like passport services and like
Mhm.
becoming an information and referral system. Here's the other ways that we think we can serve the community, so we can get behind you on that.
Mhm.
That's why.
Yeah, and that's one of the things with
And one of
passports,
the ones
like you
that
said.
fascinates me is just a tremendously fast drop was reference questions. So I'm not sure what that involves and how you're scoring.
Oh,
Cards.
our score system is someone walks up and asks us a question and we go, we do ticks on a sheet, and we start a new sheet every day, and we just do tick marks, and it's all dependent upon the employee to make sure that they write down, that they're truthful, and they write down the proper tick every time they get one. And
Well, reference services are not the same as they were a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. It is just not
It
the same.
isn't, no.
You know,
From 2014, 15.
what's changed? What's happened there?
32,000 down to 14,000.
Yeah, but think what's happened in the last 5 years, the use of online resources has
Phones.
exploded. I mean, and things like that. People aren't coming in here and asking us for those
Not calling.
particular things anymore.
Mhm.
It's very.
May I just say something? Yeah, I know I'm not supposed to.
Yeah, absolutely, you can.
I think that in the last 5 years, our local schools have gotten, the children now have computers that they can take home, they have laptops they can take home, which has changed everything.
Mhm.
Okay, so now they have access to information, not just at school, but also when they're at home. Not only do the children have access to the information, but now their parents can also go in on
Good
the
point.
computer and get information. And that's what's happening. Now our third graders have laptops that they can actually take home. So things are changing as far as technology.
Would you introduce yourself?
I'm Juanita Garner.
Thank you.
And I work for Catherine Finch Elementary School.
Thank you. But you know, that to me is an insight as well, is that, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you didn't have that.
Right.
Communities didn't have that. And so where'd you go? Went to the library. You called the library, help with the homework. I remember that.
There's free
Answering that phone.
There-
I was like-
free Wi-Fi everywhere.
Or remember, you'd
Every
answer the phone,
store.
okay, Miss Garner's given the same assignment to her class. They're all calling us with that question. I remember those days,
Oh, yeah.
remember?
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh,
we-
the reading list
So we
went
would
out.
write it up on the board, here's the answer to her questions, and we'd be able to answer them for her, right? So, but no more, because they can look it up themselves. So it's that kind of information I think is really, it's
Yeah.
not a reflection that you guys aren't doing your jobs, it's more of helping us understand why you're doing
No, and we
what you do.
we do look at this and we do evaluate it, and our program attendance has gone crazy. I mean, well, in 2013 and 14 it was crazy too, but so we look at our programs and we say, well, that one's just not really working very well. I think this is going to be the last year we're going to do it. Let's try something new. We try new things. We try new days. We move programs. We look at different things. We say, it's just not working. We used to do music programs, and they were popular, and then they weren't popular, and then so we stopped.
Well, and it's also very labor intensive, and some of the things that we did, and none of you were here, but we're tied to one of the many iterations of we're going to do a new library. Let's get people excited and show what we could do if we had the space. And so we did all these programs after hours, and we rented things, and we hired temporary staff, and we brought in rented furniture and all these different kinds of things, and had all these big after-hour programs that brought in hundreds of people, and we showed what we could do here. But it's very labor-intensive, time-intensive, and then the excitement of that went away because nothing's going to happen with the library again. And we've been through phases of this. I mean, I used to have big Oscar parties and big, all sorts of different things. But we've made decisions on how we're going to spend our time and our resources in doing those large programs when we don't really have the space.
And we do large programs, but
But
we don't
do them off-site.
We don't do them here.
Yeah.
'Cause we don't
So
have
it
room.
just depends.
This is a
And we don't
silly
count
little
those.
question, but when the Friends do Palm Springs Speaks, do they do library cards at that?
No.
And shouldn't they
No.
ask to do that?
Please no.
I think she's asking to promote getting a library card is what she's
Well, we do
asking.
have library promotional things there. We have a table, the Friends have a table, informational table, but it's insane, those events, trying to run 900
We
people
could
through.
ask them to give a $5 discount to anybody who can show that they have a library card.
Members only, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I think
So-
some things like that might
Yeah.
spur.
Well, we do some partnerships with the baseball stadium. They sometimes do a library night, and if you show your library card, you get in free.
In the past, we've done that with the art museum as well.
Yeah.
Library night at the art museum
I'll
and
give
things like
discounts
that.
on library cards in my shop. I'll be happy to.
See, yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of different.
Yeah.
But there's
So-
lots of different
There are
reasons
so many good
why
ideas.
of different
What
things.
I'd like to ask is in these, and by the way, I'm not asking you guys to go off and write a thesis on this, because I want this to be off the top of your head. I think it will be. But at our next meeting, considering the questions that David has brought up here, talk to us about why and what you are tracking right now. You know, what's the state asking you to do and why? And how does, that could be a great start to answer some of our questions. And then from there, let's talk about the next phase as to, you know, how it's impacting your program. Is that it can be 15 or 20 minutes, but I think that we start digging into understanding this a little bit more.
Yeah, and some of the things that they ask us to track are our book purchases, the number of books, the number of children's books, the number of young adult books that we have, the amount that we spent for each category. What are some of those more, all of our salaries? They want to know all the salaries of everybody, how many staff and how many volunteers.
I mean,
They're
is
more
that okay with
obscure
you, David? I
things.
mean, that we start there and look at what,
I don't know.
Sure.
what we're being required to track and then go from there and try to understand. And then I think it folds into what do we want to hear every month.
Hopefully over a couple of meetings, we can start addressing some of these questions.
Absolutely.
Because I think they're very pertinent to
I do too.
our knowledge.
All right. Anything else on that one?
Yeah. David, did you have anything else you wanted to add or ask?
And then 11G, interest income allocations from previous years.
Okay. So I talked to David Lacey, the
Right,
deputy.
he came to us before, right?
Yes, the deputy finance director, and I was just really amazed that we got some information, and it's basically the meeting that we had. I did a follow up with him, and I'm looking for my stuff. And I think this was in your packet. You got first Q1 and a Q2 interest allocation for this fiscal year. It's the sheet, it's a revenue audit trail. It says interest income, not that one. Is it towards the back?
Is it revenue audit trail at the top?
Yeah, revenue audit trail, and then it says interest income. The number in the far right, the bottom right corner, yeah, it's
So it's right after the library
21
statistics.
$21,084.86.
It's the page right after library
Other way.
statistics.
Oh, sorry, I tore my
Right here.
packets apart.
This one.
So I was completely amazed that, first of all, they were timely in giving us our interest income for the year, for the first and second quarter. But look at the amount. It's huge compared to previous years.
The only thing that I don't understand is how that doesn't reconcile with our cash.
So where is it?
It's, they told me, that's the thing that they told me. They told me that all of our interest income is in the cash number, the 1.9 million.
But it doesn't reconcile.
It doesn't grow, does it? Month over month.
We've had about a $200 increase, $300 increase in cash since last month.
But did we have expenditures
Well, then
in?
that raises another question for me, because, for
You know.
example, the $3,000 that was spent for Wellwood, should that have come out of Measure J funds, or did it come out of our cash?
The Wellwood patio, is that what you said?
Mhm.
Three-
Yeah, and that probably
Our
should
allocation.
We don't know.
No, that was the one that I said, that was from David, that was a carryover from last year. It was the David Volt's design.
But how was that paid?
From our-
From city money or from?
Our money.
It was paid in Wellwood Patio. It was encumbered 2 years ago, and it's just now being billed to your account. And it was billed in July, so this
The trust
charge.
fund.
So I think,
This is
but what
before
you're
you'd
saying
asked
is that it's not reconciling in terms of showing up in your numbers, so I do think another meeting or a follow-up with them to make sure that it's showing up in our.
Well, I think it might be showing up in our cash, is my point, is that what concerns me is that, you know, if there's accounting, you know, if things are getting charged to our cash account that are supposed to be picked up by the city, then I would
They're not.
I would want to know about that. So in other words, if, for example, if $21,000 in cash came into the cash account because it was credited to interest income, then and cash only went up $300, then, and I know I've got a $3,000 expense for Wellwood, which if appropriately charged to our trust fund, then that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But it still leaves out about $17,000 of expenditures that.
Yeah, no, I think it's
So
a
it's in,
serious question.
it's in this account. So to answer your question, now, okay, so it's in this account, which is a revenue account. So the 151-36101 account, the money's in, this is what,
See, because
I'm
I'll
guessing
go
it's
to
in
the next
there.
level. The next question to ask then is because why we have this as an agenda item is because we want to discuss whether it's appropriate to use interest income for library operating expenses. And if in fact that $21,000 has already been spent on library operating expenses, then that's all well and good. But I can't reconcile the cash, so I don't know.
it's not being spent, nothing's being spent. The finance department's assured me that your money is there, that it's not lost or in their account. When they allocate the interest income, they've assured me that the money's there.
But
And
you know, the thing is though,
in
is that I
cash.
know that my limited experience with the way the city charges departments money is that when they do charge somebody for something, it becomes a debit, and a debit has to go against something.
Mhm.
So, and since we have cash, it usually goes against cash.
It does not go out against your cash. The expenditures are on the expenditure status report.
Uh-huh.
And the only expenditure that we've had this period is a $400 charge to the PR library campaign. And so all of your expenditures, they can't spend any money out of the revenue accounts where the interest income or the cash, where the interest income is. That's a revenue account, and that's where the money goes in. And these are the accounts where the money goes out. And if they spend the money, it comes out of this account, and it's only money that you've authorized.
Right, but then the question is, why isn't it posted? And is there some really big problem that they don't post the interest
To cash.
to cash? When does it get posted? So I think there's another meeting that you and David should have.
Okay.
And I agree. I think that we're seeing,
And if
why
we're-
can we see on this report
If we're earning
interest?
that kind of money every year, you know, we may decide that we'd like to help with programs or do something more because we're earning it and because we're not able to spend it on a new library. But then it should be available.
Mhm.
Well, but the other caveat to that is I think in the last year's budget that we probably did approve that interest income would go to operating expenses.
So
I don't remember.
the last approval that was ever talked about interest income, the library board of trustees voted to spend all interest income to buy books. But we've had this snafu for the last few years where we haven't been able to put our finger on the interest income to actually spend it. So I haven't spent any interest income
So where is
at
it?
all.
Where is that interest income?
They're telling me it's in cash, but I could see what you're saying. I can
balance
see the
isn't
number and
changing.
nothing's
Yeah, the math
changing.
doesn't
And
make sense.
if there is interest in it,
$223
and the
a
board of trustees, and that's a good thing to do with it, but then it should be available to be used for that purpose, and if we're not seeing it reported, then it's a loss to the library.
It's almost like we're missing a page of something, it feels like to me, you know. We
I'm
see,
with you.
we see 2.1 million, but yet we're not seeing it change. And we know that we're getting pretty decent interest on our investment. Like,
Well, you
why
need
is
to,
it
you
that
need to
I'm-
go up a little higher. It's the, it's
you
the
know,
1955.
I'm just pulling
Yeah.
something out, just
Oh,
as an
okay.
example.
But to get
Why
20,000
isn't-
in 2 quarters instead of 3,000.
And where is it?
Is great. And I said, why? Why is it so much better now? Are you paying attention more closely to us? And they said, no, it's because just rates have improved. And
Rates have improved.
so we're getting a better
They've
return.
gone from 1% to 2% or something.
And
So
I think
they-
they also, and in my last report here, they were negotiating terms with a new financial company. So I don't know, that might have been part of the deal too.
Maybe. So
Or there's an account missing on one
I
of these
still,
reports.
I struggle with this. I know we all struggle with this, but one of the things that we were thinking about was, do we allocate everything that's in cash into an account, whether it be future library projects or a project? And is that something the budget committee wants to talk about at the meeting?
It
we're
seems
going to
like
have?
it's a good thing to talk about at the next meeting. Probably a little late to do it today, but,
Yeah. Essentially, this next question is, where's the interest going?
Yeah, that's a short-term question. And
Yeah.
I think
Where is it going?
The longer-term question probably could be answered when we go through the budget process in February.
Agreed.
To talk about whether or
Where-
not there's
where
interest
is it
income to
in
be
all these
applied to
papers?
operating
The balance,
expenses.
the
like
balance
books.
sheet that I have, and I don't, the one that I gave you with the interest income, the quarter 1 and quarter 2, that had that wasn't in the finance packet that I was given, because they had just run that last week. And so I gave that to you. When did I run that? 21st.
21st.
So on the 20th, they put that
Couple
money
days
in. The balance sheet is from the 13th. So
I see.
So then they show the accrued interest receivables there in the 12215.
Is that the same account?
Oh, yeah,
It's a
that's
different
4,000.
number.
Yeah, it's different.
The 4981, they had done an adjustment. So
That's what I mean, it doesn't
We're
really
gonna-
tie out.
yeah, yeah. So
We're almost happy.
I know.
We're
I'm
making
almost
some
happy.
money.
I was happy.
Where's
when
it going?
When I was on the phone with them, I was very happy. I understood it, and then you
Where's
go,
it going?
but where is it? The number doesn't change. So then I'm like, oh, you're right. The number doesn't change. So I don't.
Or if it's changing, they're not showing us how it's changing.
No, but he's consistently been saying that the cash is a cash number.
And
So,
he's saying that
you
it's
know,
there.
and he's saying that again to you, so it's kind of like the issue then becomes, okay, let's reconcile the cash.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah,
this
you're
was
right.
supposed to tell the 20th and you reported on the other report on the 13th, then they wouldn't have shown on the 13th.
So probably the money is going to show up. If I ran this report again, the balance sheet, the cash, that $4,900 would actually be
Almost
a
25,000.
10,000.
Right?
It might have been the 10,006. So
Maybe you guys can go over it and bring it back to the next meeting.
I agree.
yes, I'm sorry.
Answer those questions. No,
It's
we're
so
getting, we're
frustrating.
inching closer.
Can I
mean,
ask another question since we're on the topic of the finance department? Because I think one of the things that you had told me and was that you thought that the finance department was the place to go to answer my Measure J question about, and David's now disappeared. So I know we probably still need to address that issue too.
So here's what I reached out to the finance director, and she said, it's not me, it's the engineering department. So I called the engineering department, and he said, no, I just oversee the projects, it's not me. And then I watched the video of the Measure J meeting, and they said that they don't have any intent to reimburse the trust fund at this time. They said that you did not send a request, but I have a memo that I sent in November requesting they just didn't like the way it, like, they didn't like to be asked after the fact of the project, but
So do we need to have a meeting
Disappointed.
with David Reddy? Do we need to have him come here and explain that?
we can ask next week, I think, at that budget meeting. But yeah.
So what they're saying is that we asked after the fact for reimbursement, and they don't reimburse.
They also didn't think it was an appropriate request they didn't think the strategic plan was really, they thought it was too fluid.
Who's they? Is it David Reddy or the
No,
Measure
it
J
was-
committee?
it was
Because I
a-
think there was
a
a lot of
person.
argument going on in the Measure J committee about that issue, wasn't
Yeah, and there was a person at the end, after they kind of wrapped up the comments about it, then someone added more comments and said, I don't really feel like that was a good, it didn't match the definition of really what it was intended for.
I wish I could remember who said this.
He was sitting, when you watch
But
the
someone
screens on that
said
side.
to us that, because we asked this question, we asked, would our consulting and our planning, does that all fall under planning? And someone said yes.
They did
Anytime-
in this meeting.
Don't you remember that?
Yeah, they did in this meeting.
Any planning you're doing, including consultants, falls under
The
that.
gentleman who was here today answered that for us in the affirmative. But I'd recommend you sit down with Jim Gazan or whatever their committee is and begin to resolve some of those things, because it's really uncomfortable if they turn down a request that they told us they would pay for.
Or let's capture it in clearly. If we have to ask before, we do it before.
The other discussion that kind of came out of that was that it's all going towards the bigger project, and so it doesn't really matter if you spend yours on this part and they spend theirs on that part. It's all part of the bigger piece.
I think I'll follow you on that.
That was kind of, like, let's say you bought books and they bought shelves, and
That doesn't make any sense
It
because
was
it's
for
year
the-
by year allocations for Measure J. They change these numbers they look at those numbers on a yearly basis. I mean, that was one of the reasons why early last year we got a warning about whether or not we should, rejigger the numbers, because we were told that we were given a lot less than what we were allocated in the past.
I did my request in the same way when I requested that, and
But it was a reimbursement. I think
And
that's what they're getting.
I
us
just
on.
don't think they were happy with the actual
They're
request.
saying, no, you've already spent the money out of the trust fund. We're not going to replace money to the trust fund, I think is what they're trying to
Thank
say. But I think the bigger question then for me is, can you please clarify what is the appropriate use of Measure J? Is it consultants? Is it the stuff we have ahead of us? And so that we next time we won't let this happen. We're not asking for a reimbursement, we're asking ahead of time.
Well, Measure J is pretty specific that it's for the greater good of the community, and
They
they
told us
don't
that.
necessarily think maybe that they don't think a strategic plan is for the greater good, or capital projects or whatnot.
I disagree, but I didn't.
Well,
Because I think they told us we could use it for that. So this saga continues, right?
yes.
Okay. Staff reports.
I'll be quick. We had our Joan Collins event on Sunday. 500 people showed up. It was wonderful. We have two upcoming programs very soon. This Friday night, Andrea Bernstein will be at the Camelot on Friday the 31st. Tempe Locke is coming next week, February 5th at noon. And Bob Woodward is March 6th, so palmspringspeaks.org for those events. The library will be closed February 17th for President's Day. Our passport service is live. If you want to get a new passport, we are open for business. Renewals you have to do on your own. We don't do renewals. We do have forms here for renewals or passports if you need help. Check that out. We have a really interesting program. We've done this program 3 or 4 times already. It's called Cut the Cord, Streaming Basics. So if you're interested in learning about streaming services and how to cut your cord of the cable company, check that out. It's February 7th at 3 o'clock. We're doing a free modernism exhibit during Modernism Week. Did you talk about modernism in general with the Friends?
Yes.
Okay, but did you talk about this exhibit? So we're having a modernism exhibit February 10th through March 7th, and information is in our brochure. We're having a really fun children's program for Black History Month. We are having storyteller Michael McCarty, and he is a really great storyteller, but his current claim to fame is that he is the man in the Skittles commercial with the giraffe. He's like the Jamaican guy,
yeah.
and he's milking the giraffe, and it's Skittles, and he laughs, and that's Michael McCarty, and he will be here February 11th at 6 o'clock. And I've known him a long time, and he's a really great performer, great storyteller. So much fun, and he's actually in the mural at Palm Desert Library. He's one of the people in the community mural. A couple of us went to Career Day today at St. Teresa's, and it was so much fun. And we talked about being librarians, and also talked about the library and what they should do to come over. And finally, our Drag Queen Story Hour this month had a huge attendance. We had a really great program. Lots of people were there, and it revived my energy in that program because I was worried about the attendance. And
We're becoming the envy of a lot of communities who want to have it.
yeah, we're also getting some national recognition about protesting, and so
Good.
getting some complaints on that end. But it's a wonderful program. It's very teaches kindness and acceptance
It's a great
and
program.
friendship, and
I have a friend who brings her child from La Quinta just for that.
that's nice.
It's a
Yeah.
great program.
We have
It's fun.
people that come from Redlands, but people that come from afar.
And by the way, every time I see him, I thank him for doing it
Oh, it's so nice. Yes.
because I know that's
So
work.
that's all I had. Did you have anything to add?
Well, lots of programs in the programming brochure, lots of things coming up, wellness programs, nature lectures. And,
Yes.
and we have an author talk next week at the Wellwood. Lauren Nile will be talking about her book. So lots of different things going on.
Yeah, it's our high season right now.
Yeah, we can tell.
We're very busy.
Thank you. Kathy.
Yeah, just a very small request, both for people here and also for the library. We're doing a general plan update on housing, land, security, and circulation. And they are going to be doing a survey, asking people if they still agree with the sort of general plan goals that came out of 2007. And Flynn Fag is sort of leading that up, and I wanted to find out if the library could have the surveys here, but also if people on this board would also take it. It's important to look at what the goals were and also suggest whether they need to be tweaked or there are things that are missing.
Sure.
And we're hoping to get pretty big responses, so.
Be happy to.
It won't be me that'll be bringing it to you, the consultants and Flynn might want to come by the library and promote it at some point in time.
Oh, sure. And did you see that email from David Newell about the Wellwood room for this group?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check the schedule, but yeah.
Okay. They're trying to schedule meetings at Wellwood.
I suggested that last night.
Yeah, we're checking the schedule because,
They're having a hard time finding
Yeah.
locations.
well, February's out probably because of the exhibit. But
They're not having me till March.
Yeah.
oh, okay, good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna look, I saw it, I haven't responded yet, but I need to check because we have the Historical Society has their board meetings there in the evening. I just need to look at the dates and just
Yeah.
make sure there aren't conflicts that are already established.
Is the survey going to be online?
The survey will also be online, but it's just to make sure people know that it's happening. And the general plan update what happens is their goals, and then you set priorities underneath that in action items. And it will guide the city for about 10 years, so.
Yeah, we'll definitely put the survey out.
Happy to.
We're very good partners with our city.
Just a heads up, I was approached last week by a trustee from the Boys and Girls Club that was hoping to get together with the library and myself to discuss common issues.
Yeah.
So I suggested back to him that maybe a representative from each of the boards and the director of the program would get together and start discussing. So I want to give you a heads up that you may get a call, and then you can decide which, or you can do it, or one of the board members.
Sure.
So that should be
Sounds
coming out
good.
shortly.
That's a good idea. I'm doing the homeless count tomorrow too, by the way. There'll be people out in the community early doing the count and we do a survey of each person, and should be a great experience. It's my first time.
Anybody else have any comments? All right, great meeting.